Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Over the weekend, we received numerous confirmed reports of federal agents from ICE and Customs and Border Patrol abusing their power, intimidating innocent civilians, and waging war on our people. All of this has been aimed at causing chaos and mayhem in the hopes of creating a pretext to deploy military troops against Chicago and Broadview and other suburbs, just as the president is doing right now in Oregon.
All right, Shalom. I want to give all the praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai Bahasham Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who taught me this truth. Shalom to the hopeful elect. I'm back with another quick lesson through the Holy Spirit of Rakakwadash. And this is the book of 2nd Ezra chapter 14 in verse 13 in the GNT. And it reads, it says, "So set your house in order and warn your people. Comfort those who are humble and teach those who are wise. Then say goodbye to this mortal life. Put earthly cares away from you, throw down your human burdens, and lay aside your weak human nature. Put all your anxieties aside and get ready to leave this world quickly." All right, and this is the mindset that we all should have as we see Esau's world, falling before us. All right, it's about that mindset, that understanding that this place is soon, all right, to pass away. All right, 1 Corinthians 7:29. "But this I say, brethren, the time is short." Okay, this thing is almost up. Okay, Jacob's trouble, martial law, okay, nuclear war, no peace and safety. All these things are getting ready to go down. All right, the time is short. "It remaineth that both they that have wives be as though they had had none, and they that weep as though they wept not, and they that rejoice as though they rejoice not, and they that buy as though they possess not." The point, verse 31, it says, "And they that use this world as not abusing it, for the fashion of this world passeth away." All right, so this world, Esau's world, is getting ready to pass away, and it's going to go out with great violence. All right, this is why the spirit of war is being touted right now. All right, which we're going to get into in this lesson here. All right, but finishing it out, this is 2nd Ezra 14 and 15. Again, it says, "Put all your anxieties aside and get ready to leave this world quickly. You have seen many evil things already, but far worse things are about to happen." See that? And this is what you have to prepare your mind for. Okay? America, again, is getting ready to go out with violence, mayhem. Okay? Things are about to get very uncomfortable and very serious. But far worse things are about to happen. As the world grows older and weaker, the evils that will come upon its people will multiply. Right?
Moments ago, the Illinois National Guard received word that the Department of Homeland Security has sent a memo to the Department of War seeking the deployment of 100 military troops to Illinois, claiming a need for the protection of ICE personnel and facilities. What I have been warning of is now being realized.
Hello, I'm 5 times.
So let's just pass. Okay. Hey, it's getting ready to go down. How else can we put it?
One thing is clear, none of what Trump is doing is making Illinois safer. 2 weeks ago, a man was shot and killed by ICE in Franklin Park, Illinois. Shortly after, ICE issued a statement justifying the killing, saying the federal agent was seriously injured. The Chicago Sun-Times has brought to light that the injuries were, in the agent's own words, nothing major. A man is dead. A community is shaken up. And we are yet again left with more questions than answers. On Saturday, federal agents wreaked havoc on the village of Broadview, a small suburb west of Chicago with 8,000 residents. I want to recognize Broadview Mayor Katrina Thompson, who is here today, and thank her for her strong and vocal leadership on behalf of her community. I also want to thank Broadview's police chief, Thomas Mills, for his steady leadership and partnership with state and surrounding local law enforcement. In Broadview, people nonviolently holding signs and chanting against brutality, expressing their First Amendment rights, have been regularly attacked with chemical agents like tear gas, pepper spray, rubber bullets, and flashbangs. Agents reportedly unholstered their guns and pointed them at protesters.
Yeah, understand again that these militias, these agents, they're ready. All right, they're ready to come after you Israelites. Okay, Jeremiah 30:4, and these are the words that the Lord, Yahweh Shem Yahushai, spake concerning Israel and concerning Judah. Okay, the southern and northern kingdom, the 12 tribes. For thus saith the Lord, Yahweh Shem Yahushai, we have heard a voice of trembling, of fear, and not of peace. All right, and as we're going to get into, they're talking about in the name of peace. All right, to maintain what they call peace, they're going to push forth war. All right. It says, we have heard a voice of trembling and of fear and not of peace. Ask ye now and see whether a man doeth travail with child. Wherefore do I see every man with his hands on his loins, as a woman in travail, and all faces are turned into paleness. All right, because it's going to be a fearful time. Okay, when you have, like you said, a chaos and mayhem plaguing the streets. Okay, it says, alas, for that day is great, so that none is like it. It is even the time of Jacob's trouble. All right, we're in that time. It is even the time of Jacob's trouble, but he shall be saved out of it. All right, representing the elect. All right, so as we see in the headlines right now, that's all over the internet, in the news. Okay, the Department of War. Okay, Trump has declared war on American cities. All right, let's get into that. All right, this is from this came out today, September 30th, 2025. Trump directs generals to defend U.S. from war from within. All right, so they called all the top generals from the different branches of government. All right, Trump and what's the other guy, Pete Hegseth. All right, they made the announcement today. All right, that they were going to go to war, pretty much with these American cities and fight the war from within. Right, Matthew 24 and 21. For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. And except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved, but for the elect's sake, those days shall be short. So look how fast everything is moving, man. Okay, Jacob's trouble is here. All right, nuclear war is at the door. All right, everything in the spirit right now is revolving around war. Okay, because Yahweh Shem Yahushai is a man of war. Right. Let me get that in Isaiah. All right, Isaiah 42. Okay. This is Isaiah 42 and 14. It says, I have long time holding my peace. I have been still and refrained myself. Now will I cry like a travailing woman. I will destroy and devour at once. And that's the spirit, man. The spirit of war is out here, man. Okay? And the Lord is getting ready to bring forth, the ultimate end, which is a thermonuclear destruction. Okay? To devour Babylon. I will make waste mountains and hills, and dry up all their herbs, and I will make rivers and islands, and I will make the rivers islands, and will dry up the pools. All right, so that's what that nuclear fire is going to do. All right, but the point is, the spirit of war is what the vibration of war is what's in the air, man. Okay, Ecclesiastes 3rd chapter, a time of peace, right? A time of love, a time of a time of hate, time of peace, time of war, right? Ecclesiastes 3 and 8, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. All right, we're in a time of hate and war. All right, let's get into this. All right, Trump directs generals to defend U.S. from war from within. All right.
President Trump addressing hundreds of top U.S. generals and admirals at a major meeting in Virginia. He touted his decision to change the name of the Department of Defense back to the Department of War. He says it's a historic reassertion of our purpose, identity, and pride. He also emphasized his strategy of peace through strength, saying we're reawakening the warrior spirit. He also told the officers that he has their backs, pledging to make the military stronger, tougher, faster, fiercer, and more powerful than ever before. He also suggested the military use what he calls dangerous Democrat-run cities as a training ground. Earlier, Secretary Pete Hegseth told the officers to welcome the War Department because the era of the Department of Defense is over. Hegseth says the department lost its warrior ethos and became the woke department, saying the military promoted too many uniformed leaders for the wrong reasons based on race or gender quotas. Now he says the military must address the problems in its own command, and the Pentagon is ripping out the debris of DEI initiatives and woke garbage. Let's bring in senior national policy reporter Ann Flaherty, White House correspondent Karen Travers, and ABC News contributor and former U.S. ambassador to NATO, General Doug Lute, for more. So, Karen, I want to start out with you at the White House. I mean, look, this was a long, meandering speech from the president. Some of those talking points we've heard from him before, you know, jumping from Putin to the Nobel Peace Prize to tariffs. What is your distillation of the message that the president was trying to send today to these hundreds of top military officials?
You know, Selena, when the president left the White House a couple hours ago, he had pitched this speech to those military leaders as a great spiritizing, talking about this as if it was going to be a pep rally, and the way he was reinventing the military, the changes he was making in his administration to how the military operates, the new culture that he is trying to instill. But you've said it, it was meandering. The president talked at length about tariffs and Supreme Court cases that they have had on these issues. He talked at length about Joe Biden, his predecessor, and had significant criticism about the former president as well as the Biden administration. I also thought it was striking that that room, and we had confirmation from this from reporters who were there, was very quiet. It's not a crowd that the president is used to when he gives speeches in front of very political audiences who usually laugh and applaud at some of the president's criticisms of Democrats and especially his predecessor. He didn't have that today. But you also mentioned what the president was saying about what the military can do in American cities. And the president said this point several times. He talked about the executive action he's taken recently, that executive order on a National Guard quick reaction force. And he said that this is aimed at stopping civil disturbances in American cities. And he said this is a big thing for people in this room because he called it the enemy within and having to handle it before things get out of control. He made several references to that, an enemy within, domestic enemies. That was very striking to say that to that crowd.
Yeah, so, you know, as I've been reading the headlines, all right, you know, there's a war that's been waged on the so-called left. All right, so, you know, the left has been branded the problem of America. All right, going back to Joe Biden and all those laws and decrees that were established for the you know, the alphabeticals, all right, for the transformers, you know, which resulted into the moral decay and pretty much made America the laughing stock of the world. So now you see that, you know, Esau is trying to revive the Edomite spirit, man. You know, trying to, you know, like you said, you've what do you say? You've awakened the dragon. All right, putting that fight back in Esau. All right, this is why again that with Pete Hegseth, he said that, you know, you're going to learn, you know, for pretty much in the lack of better words of dealing with the Department of War. You're going to learn why it's called the Department of War, and that's his spirit. All right, he's the sword of the Most High. Okay, this is Psalm 140. And 1, deliver me, O Lord, Yahweh Shem Yahushai, from the evil man, preserve me from the violent man. Who's the violent man? The Edomite, which imagine mischiefs in their heart. Continually are they gathered together for war. All right, so this is his spirit. This is who he is. All right, and as we're going into, okay, they're talking about, you know, they pretty much declare war on these American cities. Okay, and the enemy from within. Who do you think they're talking about? You Jakes. Okay, so Jake is getting ready to be tied up into this, this war on the left. Okay, the crime that's going on in these major cities, the robberies, the shootings. All right, but America's all over the place, because in the meantime, as all of this is going on, you got mass shootings. All right, people are going in shooting up crowds in churches, all types of stuff. All right, and we told you, if I can go back to it, that's what they put in the article that I brought out a few times. But these things that are happening in America right now, all right, they told us this back in 2022, all right? Got to read that part again, because it's crazy how it was noted in this article, and it's actually happening right now, man. All right? It says if a second civil war breaks out in the U.S., it would be by a guerrilla war fought by multiple small militias spread around the country. Their targets would be civilians, mainly minority groups, you jakes, opposition leaders, and federal employees. Judges will be assassinated. Democrats and moderate Republicans will be jailed on bogus charges. Black churches and synagogues bombed. Pedestrians picked off by snipers in city streets, as we just saw with the CK incident. It says, and federal agents threatened with death should they enforce federal law. All right? So you got all types of madness going on, man. Okay? And all of this is set up to bring America down. All right? This is real quick. I want to get that 2 Ezra 16 first, about those sorrows on every side. Okay? 2 Ezra 16 and verse 37. Behold, the plagues draw nigh and are not slack, as when a woman with child in the 9th month bringeth forth her son. With 2 or 3 hours of her birth, great pains can pass her womb, which pains, when the child cometh forth, they slack not a moment, right? Because the child is about to be born. All right, indicating what? The return of the Lord, the return of Yahweh Shem Yahushai. All right, nuclear war. Okay, in the downfall of Babylon. Okay, so those plagues, they're drawing nigh, they're not slack. Things are moving extremely fast now, faster than ever. Okay, it says, even so shall not the plagues be slack to come upon the earth, and the world shall mourn, and sorrow shall come upon it on every side. Okay, there's things going on all over the world, including America, man. Okay, mass shootings, okay, crime and revolts, across the seas right now. People rebelling against their governments, burning down federal buildings. People standing up against the U.S. and Israeli hegemony, man. Okay, wars being waged against Edom. All right, NATO, what's going on between Russia and NATO with the Ukraine situation. It's all leading to war. Okay, and that's the again, these are the headlines that are dominating the news right now. You see? Let's go back. All right.
But you also noted he talked about what the rebranding of the Defense Department means in his mind. He said this is all about making the military stronger, tougher, faster, more fierce, more powerful than ever before. But Selena, I think if this was meant to be kind of a pep talk to those military leaders in the room, that was a very long speech that covered so many topics, not unfamiliar to us who cover this president every day, but perhaps for those people who were brought in from all around the world, not the speech they were expecting to hear from the president.
Yeah, Karen, and you pick on a very good point, which is this is not the typical audience that the president speaks to. So you did see him trying to crack some jokes, get a reaction from that audience. But I want to toss things over to you, General Lute, which is what Karen was talking about in these repeated references to the war within. The president is talking about rebranding from the Department of Defense to the Department of War. And I want to read to you this notable quote. He says he's talking about cities run by the, quote, radical left Democrats. He's saying we're going to straighten them out one by one, and this is going to be a major part for some of the people in this room. That's a war, too. It's a war from within.
Well, I think we all witnessed a reminder of a very fundamental military standard today, and that is the standard that the U.S. military stays out of partisan politics. That's a bright red line for everyone in that audience today, but frankly, it was not a bright red line. It's not a standard for President Trump, who essentially delivered a campaign speech. Meanwhile, his audience was respectful but subdued. With respect, they stood upon the entrance to the auditorium by the commander-in-chief, but he didn't get applause lines. He didn't get a response to his jokes and so forth. So the military was not playing the partisan game today, and I'm frankly very proud of those officers who sat in the room.
But what about your reaction to the idea that the president is talking about, being prepared for war? He's had this rebranding, and then you have these repeated references to war here at home.
Well, again, this is, I think, maybe the most poignant partisan part of the presentation today. That is that democratically led cities are overwhelmed with violence and out of control and burning, as he said, and in fact, that this now becomes a Department of Defense mission, as though it's a military mission to subdue these cities and so forth. And he cited the part of the military oath to protect and defend against enemies, foreign and domestic. And he's using that line to connect his vision of the use of American military domestically in our cities with the basic oath of office of the U.S. military. So I think many in the audience today will take from that a concern that their mission is shifting towards domestic political concerns.
And
Yeah, Trump, he's getting ready to go in. All right? We are in the midst of a police state, man.
Came the woke department, saying the military promoted too many uniforms.
All right, Salaki, let me get that, man. All right? It is definitely going down. All right? 2 Ezra 15 and 14, woe to the world and them that dwell therein, for the sword in their destruction draweth nigh. See? For the sword in their destruction draweth nigh, draweth near. And one people shall stand up and fight against another, and swords in their hands. All right? There is going to be civil war, bro. Okay? We're watching this thing turn up. Okay? The Department of War has declared war against American cities. All right? The so-called left. Okay? For there should be sedition among men, and invading one another. They should not regard their kings nor princes. In the course of their actions shall stand in the power. All right? So again, people are not going to regard the authority. There's going to be seditions. Okay? Revolts, uproars. Okay? Because of the standing laws. Okay? These decrees that are going out, what Trump is doing. Okay? The deployment of these militias, these ICE agents, what they're doing. All right, it says a man shall desire to go into a city, and should not be able, because it's going to be martial law. Okay, cities are going to be locked under control, man. Okay, you're not going to be able to move around freely in some of these major cities. It says, for because of their pride, the cities shall be troubled. That's what's happening now. Okay, these cities are being troubled because they got the military up in there, man. They have these militias, these ICE agents that are ready to tread Jake down. Okay, like we said earlier, what's his name? Governor J.B. Pritzker. He said that Trump is using this to cause, chaos and mayhem. Yep. For it says, verse 18, 2 Ezra 15:18, for because of their pride, the city shall be troubled, the houses shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid, and a man shall have no pity on his neighbor, but shall destroy their houses with the sword and spoil their goods because of the lack of bread and for great tribulation. All right. So all hell is going to break loose as we see it. All right, let's play a little bit more here, and we'll get into this. All right, this whole peace treaty, right?
He cited the part of the military oath to protect and defend against enemies, foreign and domestic. And he's using that line to connect his vision of the use of American military domestically in our cities with the basic oath of office of the U.S. military. So I think many in the audience today will take from that a concern that their mission is shifting towards domestic political concerns.
And I just want to take a step back and for our viewers at home. I mean, this gathering could be costly for taxpayers. We're talking about hundreds of these top military officials flying in from all around the world, the travel costs, the lodging. But at the same time, we are on the brink of a government shutdown, and some 2 million troops could be forced to work without pay next month if this shutdown actually happens. So what kind of message do you think that sends to our troops?
Well, you know, that's certainly interesting to point out that there are 2 million troops that would potentially go without pay, including these National Guard members who are being deployed to U.S. cities, who are leaving their paid civilian jobs and will be in the streets of D.C., Memphis, Portland, potentially going without pay. Now, I am told that they will get their last paycheck tomorrow, but if there's not a deal by Congress, that could happen very quickly. Now, you know, I think a lot of this with President Trump, you know, he is playing this as though it's not headed towards a shutdown, but many of those members in his audience are going to be scrambling to get home tonight. You are told that when a shutdown is looming, you need to return to your duty station immediately, and that if you can't fly until after the shutdown occurs, you might not get reimbursed until after spending resumes. So I want to make clear, these generals will not be stuck in any way. They will not be stuck in D.C. They will be able to get home to their duty stations, but it could complicate matters if they do not get out of town as soon as tonight.
And Karen, I want to get back to you in terms of this rebranding to the Department of War. And Hegseth earlier, he also made some comments about how we must be prepared for war now more than ever. He talked about pacifism being naive and dangerous. Is this not contradictory to Trump's campaign promise to end wars for peace?
Selena, the White House and the president will say it's peace through strength, and that's part of this rebranding. That's why they want to call it this. And the president thinks that this is a better way of looking at that warrior ethos that we've heard so much from Secretary Hegseth over the last several weeks and months. That's the emphasis they want to place on what the new culture is at the Pentagon and for service members all around the world. You know, you heard the president there.
Yeah, his culture is the sword, man. All right. Revelation chapter 6, verse 4, and there went out another horse that was red. All right, that red horse is tied back to Esau. All right, the horse represents power. Okay. And power was given to him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth. All right. There is no peace concerning Esau, man. It's nothing but war. And that they should kill one another, and there was given unto him a great sword, and that's his blessing, man. His blessing was the sword, and he's getting ready to exercise that. This is why, again, the talks is war, all right? So we're getting ready to see things happen out here on these American streets. Now, I want to real quick just talk about a little bit here, going into this peace treaty. Right, let's pull that up before we wrap it up here. All right, so it says, is this peace plan for real? So let's play a little bit of that, and then we'll wrap this up, man, because we know, as scriptures say, Isaiah 48 and 22, right? There is no peace, save the Lord, Yahweh Shemel Washai, unto the wicked. All right, so there's no peace coming. All right, so they're just, stringing these people along. All right, playing on these people's false hopes. All right. Let's play that.
I have zero faith that this is anything other than a ploy to hoodwink the Western press. And then, like they said, if Hamas doesn't agree, putting in poison pills or changing the terms or shifting in rhetoric to, of course, inspire Hamas to reject any sort of deal. But that gives them a permission structure in the eyes of Western leaders to finish the job.
Today is a historic day for peace.
I support your plan to end the war in Gaza
which achieves our war aims.
I also want to thank Prime Minister Netanyahu for agreeing to the plan and for trusting that if we work together, we can bring an end to the death and destruction that we've seen for so many years, decades, even centuries, and begin a new chapter of security, peace, and prosperity for the entire region.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has allegedly accepted the outline of Donald Trump's 20-point peace plan to end the war in Gaza that would immediately end the fighting, force the release of hostages within 72 hours, and create what Trump has dubbed a board of peace. But now the question is whether or not this plan is real or if it will once again be scuttled. So what's in the plan? If both sides agree to this proposal, the war will immediately end. Israeli forces will withdraw.
I feel I'm.
Let's let that pass. All right, so by hearing these things, that should give you a heads up, all right, based off what the scriptures, what the scriptures say. All right, let's play a little bit more. Let this commercial pass. Bear with me.
To the agreed upon line to prepare for a hostage release. During this time, all military operations, including aerial and artillery bombardment, will be suspended and battle lines will remain frozen until conditions are met for the complete staged withdrawal. Within 72 hours of the agreement being settled, all hostages, alive and deceased, will be returned. Once all hostages are returned, Hamas members who commit to peaceful coexistence and to decommission their weapons will be given amnesty. Members of Hamas who wish to leave Gaza will be provided safe passage to receiving countries.
Before we get to what happens to Gaza,
Yeah, so, based off that, all right, you already know 1 Thessalonians 5:3, all right? So this is the book of 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 and verse 3. Matter of fact, we'll start at 1. 1 Thessalonians 5:1, but of the times and in the seasons, brethren, you have no need that I write unto you. For yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord, Yahweh Shem Yahushai, so cometh as a thief in the night. For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. All right, so the fact that they're speaking about this peace plan, all right, is another a point of when they speak about that peace and safety. All right, we understand that America is at war, so there is no peace coming. All right, all this thing is like he was saying earlier, in the lack of better words, it's a smoke screen, man. All right, it's just more bullshit. So again, all right, we about to see some things go down, man. All right, another day closer to the fall of Babylon. Shalom.